Hey everyone. I am really excited about today's guest. If you've been around the Miami business scene, you probably know of Cesar Ravan. He's one of those rare CPAs that brings something completely different to the table. Here's what makes this conversation super interesting. First, he didn't start at finance at all. He was actually a professional tennis player before becoming a financial expert. And now he's built one of the most respected advisory firms in South Florida. What I love most about having Caesar here is that he's both an entrepreneur and an advisor to entrepreneurs. As someone who's worked with him personally, I can tell you that he sees things differently than your typical CPA. Today, we're going to dig into his story, understand what he thinks about business and wealth, and maybe even get some insights into what it takes to build something meaningful in today's complex financial world. I've got a ton of questions for him about entrepreneurship, wealth building, and what he sees in the future of finance. So I am super excited to have you here, Cesar. As I just said, you're very important to us. You have a lot of trust. We have a lot of trust in you, being our CPA, being our person that we seek advice. So I'm very excited to keep learning from you, and I'm happy to dig in.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. For those of you who tell us your story, tell us how you started, tell us why you chose finance and becoming a CPA.
All right, so the whole story starts with I actually graduated from FIU, Florida International University, in finance. So I was in the finance industry for a few years until the crash of '08, '07, '08. '09 was very difficult times to find a job in the finance industry. So, basically I decided to take a move to something a little bit more stable, which, I had friends from college who were CPAs. So, from there, I got my master's, went to sit down for the CPA, and I actually started my career in Ernest& Young, which is one of the big fours. From there, you kind of have to do the circuit, go and get your experience, do the things that you need to do to gain the experience. But after, like, I'll say 6 to 8 years, I opened up my firm in 2015. And my background comes with a lot of the international transactions and advanced corporate planning. And that's really what we really focus on. A lot of corporate planning, international transaction, and then as of recent, we're doing a lot of private wealth.
And what was that pivotal moment that made you decide to build your own firm rather than stay at Ernst& Young?
So, actually, from Ernest and Young, so the way the story goes is that the partner carves out. I was living at Miami, like the middle ground Miami, Doral area, and I had to travel to Boca, which is an hour and 20 minutes one way every day for 3 years. And when that partner carved out and opened up shop in Miami, it was a no-brainer for me to kind of go and say, okay, I'm going to follow this person. I did work for other firms after that, but the pivotal moment was when I actually was offered a partnership agreement in one of the last firm that I worked for, and I was looking through the contract, and basically my clients that I brought in would have been their clients, right? So that was, caveat number one. Caveat number two was if I ever decided this, disengage them and leave, I would have to buy out my own clients from them to leave. And the third part was they wanted me to bill a certain amount of hours every year at a certain rate. And in my head, I'm going like, if I'm going to do that for them, why don't I just do it for myself and I keep all the glory? So I decided not to sign. I actually walked away in that meeting.
That's it's such a it's like a movie. It's like a certain moment, a day, a time that you had to make this big decision. Did you feel that you were going even before that? Did you always feel an entrepreneur, or did you always want to go to business by yourself, or was it like, okay, you saw this opportunity and then you jumped in it?
So I always had an entrepreneur um, mentality. I mean, I've gone through several businesses before that some were successful, some weren't. It's the journey and it's the lesson. It's the tuition, like they say, right? That you
Hmm.
learn. Um, I always wanted to do something in this space, and I knew that what I wanted to build. Um, but it's easier to do it when you already have the platform on somebody else. So that was my idea. I was like, well, if I have a firm that really matches my core values and matches what I want to do, I can do it there with them, and I have partners, and you can relate a little bit with bouncing ideas. But when that was presented to me, I knew we weren't aligned. So I took the leap of faith, and I'm actually really glad that I did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it turned out incredible. Why did you decide finance though? What was the why are you in finance?
So I'm good with numbers. I enjoy numbers. It was not always finance because I actually did go 1 year to law school and I absolutely hated it. It wasn't for me. Um, but usually, first year of a law school is when they wean out all the people that want to try to make it as a lawyer. Um, so it wasn't for me, and at that time, my head was at something else that I wanted to do first. So I guess it wasn't for me. And then when I got back into school and kind of finished them up what I wanted to do, finance was something that I really enjoyed.
And I like how you put it as trial and error, and it's sort of like life has put you given you these forks in the road. Do you continue law? Do you not? Do you continue in a big company or not? And now that you're both an entrepreneur and you're an advisor to an entrepreneur and you understand businesses inside and out, let's discuss like challenges of scaling. What do you think are the biggest challenges and that people make, and how would you what would you suggest that they do?
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge on scaling is finding the right um, team employees, right? I think that's at least in my world, that's the biggest concern. The second I would say is that the the entrepreneur himself is probably the cause of a lot of problems. Um,
Hmm.
maybe by overthinking things too much, um, maybe not having the right vision and not really seeing what the market is, giving him the opportunity to create. So it's a twofold type of thing. But definitely for people who do understand what their vision is and where they want to go, finding the right people is one of the biggest challenges at the moment.
So because I work with you and work with your team, I'm a testimonial. Like your team is incredible. You've really built a great team around you. How do you do that?
So I take my time to find the right candidate, and I do it, you know, obviously, anybody that does, traction, the EOS system, or does scaling up, you want to put the right person in the right seat. So a lot of entrepreneurs want to create a family environment type of work, right?
Yeah.
But that's the wrong mentality because it is very difficult to fire your own sister, right? If she
Hmm.
messes up, right? It's not the same conversation you would have with a family member. It's what I was trying to say. But if you treat your firm, your company as a sports team, if you think of, you know, the Miami Heat, or you think about a really good soccer team, everybody is there for a specific role and a specific reason, right? So if you identify well each of the position and you kind of create the profile that you want, and then you go after it and you take your time to look for that person, that's what it is. Using you as in a specific example, we knew the type of CPA you needed, and we wanted somebody who, because firms like yours, we have certain clients like that, and even us are very similar to that aspect. So we needed somebody who had that previous experience in this type of industry, and this is what they did. So we brought them specifically for you, right? So it's just knowing the right positions and knowing the profile and just going out there and looking for it. Sometimes it happens when the entrepreneur is too desperate to get a body there to kind of fix the immediate emergency, is when they get themselves into trouble.
I love the analogy that you made to sports, because I think sports, if you think of a team as a sport and then business is a competitive sport, and you need to be able to put the right people on defense, on offense, you need to have the right strategy, the right coaching, then you can win.
Right.
And then you can choose people for the objective that you're doing. And I feel that you gave that pearl of wisdom, but then you gave something even more important, which is understanding your client. Understanding your client's needs, because it's not only about filling a team and, oh, I have a vision. It's also saying, how do I make my client successful? How do I successfully meet the needs of my clients and go above and beyond? Because I think that is a true mission of every business, and I think people forget about this.
Right. It's you have to understand, again, when I went back to trying to understand what the market is asking to do, right? One, and then finding the right people that fit that need that you have inside of your firm, plus the need that your clients are requesting from you. So those are two very important things that you need to keep in mind.
Yeah. And then now that you're in the advisory role as well, and you've been super frank with me, so I know how when you tell me something's a bad idea, I listen. But how do you balance that? Because I'm sure there's people that come to you and say, I need a CPA, I need you to sign this document, my tax return, and that's it. How do you balance providing knowledge as well as a service?
So I think I understand the question. So usually we kind of, right now, the way we're doing things is that we pick and choose the clients that we want to work with. We've gotten to that point where we're not in the necessity of blasting to the moon, but we just want to be able to grow organically and grow in a way where we're all happy, right? So yes, I mean, if I have a friend, let's say you came to me and you say, look, I mean, I have somebody that wants to just do the tax preparation, they need help with that, and I'm happy to do that, and prep their tax return and give them some advice and send them on their way, right? I don't have a problem with that, because who's my main client? You are, right? Mm-hmm. But if that same person came in without the referral, then it's something that we wouldn't do, because one of the other things that I think that entrepreneurs get into trouble is that they don't identify really who their main client is, who's their target client.
Yeah.
And just continue to service that and look for that client. So we started doing that a few years ago, and we've been very successful in doing that, because that's how we provide the best service we can, because that's the client that we're looking for.
And I guess that sorry, I didn't ask the question correctly before, and you answered it. What I was looking for, it's how has your approach to serving entrepreneurial clients evolved since you became one? And you answered by saying, well, I take on the clients that I can serve.
Right.
You know, you cannot, you can serve other people, you can sign a paper for other people and do their tax returns for other people, but really the value add of working with a CPA that and a wealth manager that understands entrepreneurship,
Right.
understands investments, that's where you get more value
Right, correct.
on
So,
both sides. On both sides, yeah.
right, because I'll give you an example of another EOer that I was having an earlier conversation today. The client was looking to exit, and she wasn't sure about the exit until I brought it up as part of the planning. Usually we go and we're planning for the next couple years, and I asked her, hey, when are you planning to retire? When are you planning the exit? This is this is a conversation that we kind of need to start planning, because a lot of people are entrepreneurs are getting really excited about the money that they can make, when they exit their business, but they don't really think about, well, did I really plan for this correctly? Because the IRS is going to take a little portion of it as well, right? So if I'm catching the exit early, there's a lot of things can be done to minimize, almost eliminate completely the capital gains tax that they will get on the exit.
And this is a great segue because I wanted to talk about investing and the challenges that entrepreneurs face when they're balancing like their business growth with personal wealth, and then a liquidity event is probably the biggest event that's going to happen to their lives. It happened to me going from entrepreneur to becoming an investor, and it's not only like a financial thing. It's to me it was like an identity thing. I was like, now what the hell am I? I used to be this guy that did this business, and now I don't know what I am. So what are the most common blind spots that you see that entrepreneurs try to manage their personal and business finances?
So, twofolds. One, we'll start with the business side of things. The first one is that they're super excited about the exit and looking at what their final liquidity is going to look like, without really understanding what the liabilities are going to be after that, right? That's the first thing, right? Do they have the proper structure to absorb that? Do they have the proper planning to do that? Did they make the correct elections? Sometimes most of those elections they have a timeline and you can't do them anymore, but there are other things that can be done, right? So they're more focused on the end result, because obviously going into a liquidity, selling the business, it's a lot of work, but they miss some of the other intricacies that are part of that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that they don't have a plan for what's the afterlife. And after you sell the business, okay, now I have all this money. What am I going to do now? So I have run through some clients who suffer depression after they sell their business, because they have nothing else to do and they find no purpose in life, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important to kind of know what's your pre-exit strategy and your post-exit strategy.
I definitely can relate. I think that most people, most entrepreneurs do not plan for an exit
Right.
and well enough. They think, okay, if this happens, I'll have X, Y, Z, but there's really A, B, C, D, E. Like there's so many other things that they need to think about. There's not really, they kind of think, okay, I'm going to get X millions of dollars and then I'm going to do this and that. But really what you're saying is you need to plan a lot deeper.
Yeah.
And those are all blind spots that many entrepreneurs are not even seeing.
Correct.
I even see that many, as you know, I help entrepreneurs invest. And I see many business owners struggle with like extracting themselves from the day-to-day operations to focus on wealth building. They're like, all I think about, you have no idea how many people I speak, like all I think about is my business. All my investments are in my business. I spent all my time in business, and then I'm like, when what are you doing for yourself or for your money, or your money doesn't have to be in the same thing. Uh, how do you manage that, or how do you help them navigate this?
So that's part of our conversation in the wealth planning side, right?
Hmm.
So we kind of a lot of the tax planning that we do, we go deeper into not only just the numbers, but how the operation works, right? And then we try to advise them on specific areas where they can, for example, simple things, hire a virtual assistant versus you doing the admin work, right? This will
Yeah.
free you up to do other high valuable stuff. Simple things that we can look at and give them the advice to free up their time to do what is more important for them. And then getting into the wealth management side of things, okay, so you're creating all of this. What's your purpose of this? Why you're doing all of this? Are you trying to provide legacy for your family? Are you just trying to do this for your own satisfaction? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, all they want to do is get to a number and say, I made it to 1 billion. Great. And then after that, they'll donate it. So I'm like, okay, if that's your strategy, let's figure that out, and how to do it properly.
When do you think people should start thinking about wealth management, or when should they put this in their purview?
Honestly, it's something that you have to do at a very young age. Meaning, if once you're getting into your 20s and 30s, it's something that you've got to start putting in plan because
Hmm.
you just never know what life is going to throw at you, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, even though you're getting up in a startup and stuff like that, a lot of people don't think about this. But what happens to me if I'm not in the firm anymore? How is that? Who takes care of my daughter? Who takes care of my wife? Or if something happens to her and me at the same time, who takes care of the little one, right? So
Yeah.
all of that needs to be set in place because what happens is that, and I've had to deal with this before, where I have to jump in, and try to help the family manage, the business because the patriarch is not there anymore, right? And then now their family's coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, by the way, I got a text from a few years ago. He told me I was going to be the owner, right? So you wouldn't believe the things that you would get, right? But those things happen. So it's really good to have everything in place early on.
I 100% agree. And I think people shouldn't be preoccupied with this. They should be prepared. And there's a
Correct.
big distinction of this. It's not like you need to be worried that something's gonna happen to you, but you do need to think, I am prepared. I need to understand how everything works. And I recommend a book called E-Myth, which is fantastic. It sort of think about it of franchise model to your business. Every process is documented. Everything is written in a way that someone else can just read and operate. And your finances and your money and your tax planning should have a process, and that's what really makes you successful.
Correct. Correct.
In your experience, what's the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make when it comes to tax strategy and investment planning?
Do you want to laugh?
I
TikTok.
want to laugh.
TikTok, social media.
I
It.
love it. Love the answer because I know where you're going.
You would not imagine the amount of emails and texts I get from entrepreneurs saying, "Hey, Caesar, I got this strategy. Why have you not implemented this?" Right?
Yes, yes.
And my response has been, "I don't want to come and visit you in jail." So
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, okay, thanks." Right? But there is, there are times where it happens where you will get an entrepreneur who, without asking me, without asking my team, hey, can I apply? I saw this, and which is great. Please do see it, right? Get your information, read, and ask me for more information about a certain thing that you want to do. I'm happy to provide you the information, right?
Yes.
But the mistake is going, oh, I heard this at this seminar, and it's not always TikTok, right? Sometimes there are these conferences that are put out, by certain individuals, right?
Hmm.
That, oh, I heard this, I went out and I just did it myself. Yeah, it does. Then to unwind that, it's very difficult and very costly, and there could be penalties for it too. So it's not asking enough questions. I would say one of the biggest problems I see in entrepreneurs.
I love the answer, and I feel absolutely identified with. I do get sometimes when I present an investment strategy or friends that know what I do, potential some clients as well that message me at 2 in the morning and they say, "Hey, why are we buying Section 8 houses? This guy is so young; he has 100 of them." And then I say, if it was so good, we would be doing it. We are on top of, we are professionals in this industry. Every day we wake up and we think, how do we make more money? I'm sure you wake up every day and say, how do I optimize tax planning? How do I make this, how do I keep more money in my clients' pockets? Because that's the value add I bring to them. So
Right.
if it was so good, I would be already doing it. And
Right.
yes, like you said, yes, we welcome people to read it and to say it. Or perhaps I have another example where someone told me like, "Oh, it's so silly. This Airbnb is so easy." I said, "Do you know what? If something is easy, then everybody would do it." And I love that answer. And then you're right. It's not asking enough questions, but also not surrounding yourself with enough experts around you that you can make your decisions. You can face the consequences. Maybe you're right. Maybe you can make more money than we can, or maybe you can have a better tax planning. But I think those are lucky breaks. Um, they're not really the norm.
Right. Right. I mean, I've heard people making good money in Section 8s, right? But they have a whole team behind
Team,
them.
yeah,
There is infrastructure behind them, and there's a huge amount of money also
yeah,
behind that, right?
yeah.
So it doesn't work for everybody,
For everybody, and it's the same thing with taxes. Like you were saying, like some people they can go to to that conference or the TikTok, and it makes perfect sense for them. So it really depends. But it's
Right.
like you said, it's the asking the question part where people make
Right.
mistakes.
Well, so one of the things that I get, it was like, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, our president-elect was being audited and his tax returns were divulged to the public, and they find out that he only had to pay somewhere in the tunes of $750 in taxes or something like that. And they're like, when that came out, there was a lot of people going to me and like, well, whoa, 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 this guy's a billionaire. How is it that he's paying that? What is it that he's doing you're not doing, right? And I'm like, okay, how much real estate investment do you have? Oh, none. Okay. Are you willing to put in, millions of dollars in real estate, investments in order to get the same benefits? It doesn't have to be millions, but at least a good chunk to do that. Oh, I don't have the money to do that. Great. So you can't have the same strategies he has. So there are two different separate scenarios. Do you see what I'm saying?
Exactly, exactly. And this is something that I always get questioned on as well. Is like, what can you give me tax strategies for me? And I'm like, this is not only can I not do that, it's different for every single person.
Right.
It's very complex for every single. And then when someone tells you like, oh, I have a W-2, and then I do this, and then I do that, and I'm sure it happens to you a lot. Uh, but then I suggest something, and then they'll say, "Oh, but by the way, I also spend half of the year in Spain, and I have a European passport." And think, "Oh my goodness, like more, and the can of worms keeps
Yeah.
popping up."
And the funny part is like not only that, but there's certain things that come out like right now there's a big, I would say it's the word of town, and I've seen some CPAs and enrolled agents, on social media talking about it, like in your industry, cost segregation studies, right?
Yeah,
So everybody now it's like, oh, I'm a genius. You need to do cost segregation studies. Yeah, it's a great tool to have, but you need to know when to use it and how to use it, right? Because, for instance, if you buy a property, right, this year, which you're going to remodel and sell it within the year, there's no reason why you're going to do a cost segregation study because that's going to bring your basis down, right? So unless there's other tax strategies you're going to use it for, sure. But now everybody's showing up on my door saying, look, let's do cost segregation studies. Yeah, that's one strategy that you can use, but it's not for all the scenarios. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this applies to, so I guess the lesson I'm taking from this is like entertain yourself with social media, use it to spark curiosity, and then to ask better questions.
Correct.
But don't use it as, hey, a few years ago it was also you need to buy a car that's more than 600 pounds, like 6,000 pounds, because you can fully send it to expenses. And then some people went and did that, but then they didn't have the income to own those cars. So it's like, why are you even doing that? And then like it just doesn't make any sense. So I
To
think it's
add to that, right?
yeah,
They go out and they sell the car the following year, and they kind of come back and they're like, wait a second, why do I have to pay taxes on this? And I'm like, well, yeah, you bought the car, you depreciated it, right? This is your cost basis now, and you're selling it for this, right? So the spread is what you're paying taxes on.
yeah,
Oh, but I bought it for 100 grand. And I'm like, yeah, but you depreciated 100 grand last year. So you got no basis.
yeah.
So did TikTok tell you that?
That wasn't the entertaining part. The entertaining part is like you can be so cool and get a G wagon and you're gonna be the smartest guy in the room because you're gonna say that I am a real estate professional, so I can deduct all these taxes, and then the next year you can't afford it, so you
I
need to
mean, you're
pay.
in the car for 5 years, or you're buying the car so because you're in the touro business, right? You're going to
Yeah,
rent the car and stuff like that. Okay, that makes sense, right? You're going to rent it. You're going to make some money. You know, at a later time, 5, 6 years down the road, you're okay, perfect. That makes sense. But if you're going to flip it every year, no,
no.
doesn't make sense.
How do you help your clients balance their like natural entrepreneurial risk tolerance with more like sound personal financial planning?
So give me an example of that, because
So I find that entrepreneurs are entrepreneurial. So I do this, I see A, B, C, D, E, and then I see a shortcut or I see like a faster way of doing things, and my entrepreneurial brain goes, why am I going this route? So how do you, but in taxes, in investments, there's no shortcuts. There's just compounding, and consistency is like the superpower. You can't, and an entrepreneur is very operational. Like, give me a tree to move and or mountain to move, I'll find a way to do it. But in this type of things, you need to be more patient, and then understanding patience. And how do you teach entrepreneurs to
well,
be more patient?
that's a good question if we bring up Bitcoin, right? So, obviously in the world of investing, there when cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is doing well, they're like, well, what can we do more about that, right? And the word of caution that I tell my clients is like, look, I'm not telling you don't have it, right? But don't put your fortune in it, right? Don't try to make the quick buck because that's how people lose money really
Yeah,
quickly, right? So put enough to where you know that if you do lose it, then it hurts, but you'll live, right? Um, Try to keep a balance on that, and that's in the same thing with any other things. Like if you're going into a business, making sure that you're going take your risk because no risk, no rewards, right? Take your risk, but make sure that it's not going to push you way behind to where it takes you a lot of time to recover.
yeah.
So that's the advice.
So I like it. It's don't try to go too fast, too quick. Perhaps it's just the question of, and I agree. I have the unpopular belief, or I promote, this is my opinion, obviously, that people that don't have $1 million shouldn't own crypto because it's too volatile to hold. If you have $10,000 or $50,000 and you put in crypto, you're gonna suffer like crazy. But if you have $1 million and then you put $50,000, same $50,000 into it, if it loses money, you won't. It'll sting, but it won't.
Correct.
It won't affect your nothing. It doesn't affect your portfolio,
Right.
and then you can make better decisions because your house is not on fire. Whereas if you only had those 50,000, you're either very happy or very sad, and that's not a way to invest.
So I know people in their older age, almost retirement age, that were approached on the, to invest in the crypto space, and they went in blindly.
Oh no.
And most of their retirement money is, gone. And million warnings, like don't, just put a small amount, just get your fix, right? If you enjoy it, fine, get your fix. I'm not saying I don't have investments in crypto, I do, but it's so small that it's fun to kind of play around with friends and like, hey, this went to the moon, right? But it's nothing like, if I lose it, it's nothing that I'm going to lose sleep about.
Exactly. And that's why I say the million mark, because the more volatile something is, the more maturity you need to approach it.
Right.
I believe
Right.
I wrote this letter. It was one of my best, let's say, thought leadership pieces that I put out there. It was, don't invest like a billionaire when you're not one. Billionaires can take the chances that and they're putting 0.5%, maybe 1% into these things, and they look like rock stars. The Bitcoin guy is super wealthy. Yeah, but he didn't make his money on Bitcoin. He made his money either building businesses or through more traditional sources of building wealth, which are stocks, real estate, bonds,
Right.
credit, just things that are just proven. And then you don't need the hit. That's the other thing, is that people don't understand that you don't need the huge wins to win. You and I played tennis competitively, professionally, and we know that it's not about the winner. It's about who puts the ball one time more. It's about who puts more first serves into the. It doesn't have to be an ace. If you have a higher percentage of first serves, you will win the game.
Right.
So it's the same applies to investing. It's just about putting the ball in, and it could be a little lob, but if you put it in more, you win.
Right. Right. So I don't know if
Looking,
you remember back in those tennis days, there was a book that Brad Gilbert used to put out, Winning Ugly.
winning ugly.
Yeah, it doesn't have to look nice,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And I actually say, I say about entrepreneurship the same thing, is we all are born ugly. I started this podcast ugly. You start investing ugly. You don't get to the flashy things the first day. The day that you want to go flashy is the day that you fall. It's the day that you put too much money in. Like, I see these restaurants, first time owner of restaurants, they put $5 million into the build out, and you go there and you say the food,
It's terrible.
inedible. Like, it cannot, it doesn't work. So those are big mistakes that people are making. Like, and winning ugly. I would also go to that other book, which is Playing to Win. You're not playing to be flashy. You're playing to win. So if you want to play to win,
Right. Right.
just do what you need to do to win.
Right. Correct.
Looking ahead at your entrepreneurial and investment landscapes, what trends are you most excited about in the next few years?
As far as investing in,
Yeah, or entrepreneurial landscape, perhaps something new that's coming.
so tech is the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ourselves are, heavily involved in tech. We think that the industry will be changed by it. So we're investing a lot on that and looking for ways to make things a lot more efficient. The other thing I think is like the world is becoming much smaller. So I see a lot of my client base, moving across borders, doing more business in Canada. We're doing more business in Mexico. Um, Even though right now the president-elect wants to keep a lot of things here, but that's fine. But there's going to be more exports from the U.S. No matter if companies are coming back to the U.S., there will be more exports.
Yeah.
Um, I think that American made are a lot better than anywhere else made. So, I'm excited about the cross border. And hence why we're so involved in the international alliance and stuff like that, because we see that. We see that, people want to start crossing those borders and really make, business in South America, make investments in South America, make investments in certain parts of Europe. So I see that, at least in my small world, I see that tech and then the globalization of industries are, being a little bit more compressed.
Yeah. I always say your money doesn't need a visa. So
Does not.
people are now noticing or being more exposed to different opportunities than ever before, and you don't like maybe services and goods might have tariffs, might have more requirements, or if you want to relocate yourself as a person, it's also very difficult. But your money doesn't need
Correct.
any requirement. You can diversify yourself. You can move money and concentrate in other places where you can mitigate risk or even make bigger returns.
Right. Right.
How do you see the relationship between like CPAs and entrepreneurs evolving now that especially like there's a huge rise of AI and automation?
So, because we're a little bit in that space, and looking at ways to AI to helping automate a lot of like internal accountings and companies, CPA's role, it's evolving to be a more advisory role. I think that those days of the CPA just preparing tax returns are far gone. I actually think that today it's
Hmm.
it's
Wow.
a dying breed. Um, a lot of the baby boomers that are selling those, CPA practices have that model. We're picking them up, and we're looking at the client base and looking at other ways to expand the client base, because you know that's the old model. The new model right now is, you know, being side by side, of being a partner with the entrepreneurs to grow their business. It's more of the advisory role,
Yeah.
right?
And I don't want to say that people, maybe the worst part of a CPA is doing tax returns. I don't want to say that because I'm sure there's some joy in doing the numbers and doing it properly and everything matching up, but it's not the highest value of the CPA.
It's
You know,
not.
it's the highest value of the CPA is getting that right, but then being able to advise someone in the right way and understanding this year we did this, next year we need to do X, and then we keep growing.
Right, correct. So for us, the tax return is the end product, right? It's the final part of the entire plan that we did, right? So usually the tax return will tell us if what we planned throughout the year and what we did and we forecasted for the year, it was right? Um, but it's not the main focus that we do. So, it still, a lot of CPAs and a lot of, tax accountants out there that's their main focus, right? But, the future is changing, and I think that will be obsolete, in the future.
And in a way, maybe less prone to error too, because more is automated, more is in AI, more you can say like they're the limits, it limits account CPA error, human error. Now it's going to be, did our strategy align? Did we make sure that we got to our to our KPIs? How are we doing for next year? Are we going to have a good year? How do we make sure that we mitigate some of those taxes that might come? Or if we're going to have a bad year, that's also an opportunity to do other things.
Right, right. I just still think that the AI kind of looking at doing, I mean, we have AI now doing tax preparation, but it's very simple. So you got, TurboTax, kind of saying, okay, I take a picture of my W-2, my mortgage interest, my real estate taxes, simple returns, they'll do it, right? But as soon as you take the next step where you are, think about it, a self-employed, you receive a 1099, you're done. Like AI cannot do that, right? Because it'll pick up the income, but then there's a bunch of strategies that AI would not do. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I still think we're 5, 10 years before I can simply just run sheets into the software and boom, it's done, right? Um, Humans still need to be. It's like the robo investing, right?
Yeah.
So humans still need to be there and kind of verify that things are done correctly, and make sense, and everything. It has to be white glove service for each person.
Yeah. With you mentioned robo investing. For me, it's they all make sense. They are all good investments. Are they right for you? Is the right
Correct.
question. It's
Correct.
not. It's no longer. Is this a good investment? It's like they're all good investments. You need to know if this is for you or not. And this takes the expertise and the experience and the planning and the long term thinking and then
Right.
managing.
Right. Right.
Well, it was wonderful to have you here, pick your brain. We always have very deep conversations. Like I said, I trust you. I always consult with you whenever I have a question. Poor thing, he gets emails from me at 2 a.m. from me and my wife, and what do you think we should do? We need this by 6 a.m. And you've always been super generous with your knowledge and making sure that we make the right decisions. Um, so I'm super grateful to have this conversation and to learn more from your point of view. I like to finish podcast episodes by asking you what inspires you in the job that you do today.
If you asked me this 2 years ago, would have been a different answer. Today, my inspiration is my little one and my wife. Um, we have a plan to basically kind of start unwinding in the next 10 years. Me being away from operations and being away from like the day to day. I still enjoy, this conversation with clients and bouncing off ideas and how to build, giving back, right? But my inspiration is to be able to spend as much time as I can with them, and I want to build something where they will be proud of, and maybe one day if my little one wants to take over the realms, then she can do it.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love that inspiration because it also makes you more successful. When you think you want to do less, everything has to be more efficient. Everything has to be better done. Learn to say no, which usually brings you more value. And then you think, what am I wanted less. Now I want, it's a counterintuitive prophecy, but it definitely happens. And I'm
So
very excited to keep working with you. And then we can
appreciate
do
it.
this again in 5 or 10 years and see where you are.
Yeah, so there's an exercise that I did. A friend of mine brought it to me. Um, Somebody that I care very much about. And he brought my wife in and basically said, okay, if money wasn't an issue, what kind of lifestyle would you have? And we're like, oh, we would have this and we would do that and that. They're like, okay, now that we have, and my wife and I are not big on having a yacht and private plane. That's not really us, right? But we had a lifestyle of, traveling, being in nice places and stuff like that. So it was like, okay, from now on, going forward, every decision you're going to make, it's one step towards this. If that decision goes away from this, it should be a no. And that has been our focus going forward. So
Wonderful.
every time we look at, is that going to take us one step closer to this?
Love it. Love it. So we all have homework from this episode is to write down what we would be doing if, or how does your life look if money was not an object? And then every action that we take, does it get us closer to that or further? So I love that. I'm going to do it today.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All
Thank you,
right.
of course.
Okay.